everyone and welcome to the tutorial. Today I'll be demonstrating how to add a fringe to a piece of knitting. You can also use this same technique to add fringing to your crochet projects or even a loosely woven fabric. The materials we need for this technique are your piece of knitting or crochet or fabric or whatever, some yarn to use. I'm using a contrasting colour here so you can see really easily what I'm doing, but if you've got any leftovers from your initial project, this is a really great way to use them up too. A crochet hook. It doesn't really matter what size hook you use. I generally like to use something that's pretty much the same size as the knitting needles I used in my project. You'll just find that if you pick a hook that's too small, it'll be really hard to hook all the fringe yarns around it. And if you use something too big, it'll be really hard to poke it through your fabric. So just something in the middle is best. A ruler or something to wrap your scrap yarn around, and a really nice sharp pair of scissors. Okay, so the first step in attaching our fringe to our piece of knitting is to cut lengths of yarn that are then going to become our fringe. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. Just keep in mind that whatever method you use, the total length of the yarn is double the length that the fringe will be. Because once you have the cut yarn, you fold it in half and then you pull it through your work and attach it to your work. So the fringe is then half what the total yarn was. So how you could do this is you could grab a piece of cardboard or strong plastic, wrap your yarn around it a few times, and then cut the yarn along one edge, and then you would have a piece of yarn that's double this width. So when you fold it over, your fringe will then be approximately the width of what you wrapped the yarn around. My favourite way to do it is to just literally get a ruler and measure double the length that I want my fringe to be, because I usually have a pretty good idea of how long I want the fringe to be, and if I use cardboard I'd have to have quite a few cut to different widths. So in this case I want a fringe that's about 4 centimeters long, so I need to cut my yarn 8 centimeters long, double that fringe length. So I'm just going to measure and cut. And you need quite a few lengths of yarn generally, because you usually add more than one fringe to your work, and for each fringe you might want, say, 4, 5, 6 bits of yarn. So I'm just going to keep measuring and cutting. It doesn't have to be exactly precise. And once I'm done, we'll come back and see how this gets attached to our project. Okay, so I think I've got enough cut pieces of yarn now, and if I run out I can always go back and cut some more later. I've decided for this project to make each fringe using 4 strands of yarn. So I've got my 4 here, and what we're going to do is fold those cut pieces of yarn over like so and hold them bundled. So we've got a little loop at the top and then the cut ends down the bottom here. So what you'll notice is that this is going to be one fringe, and it's ended up being double the thickness of the yarn that I originally started with. So I started with 4 strands of yarn, and now my fringe is the equivalent of 8 strands of yarn. So just be mindful of that when you're selecting how many pieces of yarn to use. Whatever you use, your fringe will end up double that thickness. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is I'm going to grab my crochet hook, and with the right side of my finished piece of work facing me, I'm going to insert the hook from back to front. And it's really important to do it back to front so we get a really neat look on our fringe. So I'm just going to start in this corner here, and this is actually my bind off edge. I'm going to just flip the corner up so that the wrong side is facing me to make this a little easier, and then poke the hook through that corner bind off stitch from back to front, just like so. So now the hook is popping through the right side. I'm then going to grab that yarn again, make sure it stayed folded over. So we've got this little bundle, and this loop is what I'm going to hook around the crochet hook. So I'm going to grab the hook and just catch all of that yarn with it, like so. So it's just folded over the tip of the hook. And this next step is a little bit fiddly, but using both hands, I've got my left hand just holding that yarn securely and my right hand just pulling the hook. I'm going to pull that yarn through my knitting so that it's poking through the other side. So I've now got a loop on this wrong side of our work and the cut ends of yarn are still on the right side. So don't pull it through all the way. And then I'm just going to pull the loop up so that I have enough room to bring the hook back around to catch the cut ends, secure with my finger, and then pull them through the loop like so. You then pull it to tighten, and we have a completed fringe. I've just added a few more fringes to my work, and I wanted to pause and show you how I like to space my fringing evenly. So there are two ways you can do this. The first is if you're working with a rectangle or a square and you've got very linear edges, you can add your first two fringes to the corners and then work from the outside in. So you might like to add another one where it looks like you're halfway between these 2 points, and then you could halve between these 2 points and add another one here, or you could break it into thirds and add one here and here, and then go back to this side, halve it, or break it up into thirds and add fringes here and here. And that way, overall, it looks like everything's really evenly spaced, and that makes your work look neater. Your other option is to start at a certain point and add your first fringe, and then count a certain number of stitches before you add your next one. So let's say I wanted to add a fringe every 5 stitches. I've got my first one here. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, add another fringe here, count 5 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, add another fringe here, and so on. I'm just going to do it one more time. Got my 4 lengths of yarn here. I make sure the ends are lining up before I fold it, so that means that I get the center of all those bits of yarn. Grab my crochet hook and insert it from back to front through the middle stitch. I've decided between these 2 fringes here. Grab my bundle, catch the center of those folded lengths of yarn with the hook, draw them through to the back side of my knitting, pulling a loop through, lift the loop up, and then catch those ends of yarn and pull them through the loop to secure to my work, and then just tug and pull to tighten. So because I've been inserting my hook from back to front, it means I get this really smooth edge on the front of each fringe, and then the other side has this sort of folded puckered edge. If I wanted this to be on the front side of my work, I could insert my hook the other way from front to back, but generally this is considered the right side of a fringe. And that's all you need to do. Just keep doing that to add each subsequent fringe. Once you're all done, you might like to go back with a pair of scissors and just neaten all of these edges up. But otherwise, that's how you add a fringe to your piece of knitting. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please do leave them below.